Good morning, everyone. Welcome to INSPINAR, the inspirational seminar. INSPINAR is a 30-minute conversation designed to empower us all with the roadmap for a more peaceful and productive life. I have a very special guest on my episode today, Maxwell Bentley. I first met Maxwell in the context of him attending one of my seminars on life technology balance in Atlanta. 3 days after the seminar, Maxwell took it upon himself to record a 3-minute video testimonial of his experience of the seminar. You might not believe it, Maxwell, but as I watched that 3-minute video, I had a constant stream of tears pouring down my cheeks. Your 3 minutes of video made my passion worth it. So thank you for being you.
Thank you so much. You are incredibly kind to share that, and it is a pleasure to be joining you this morning.
Thank you, Maxwell. All right. So the question for today's episode is, how do you monetize your passion? Before I let Maxwell dig into that question, let me introduce you to him formally. Maxwell is a video producer known for launching high-performing video marketing strategies for brands across the globe. He has partnered with Roblox, Hyundai, Quantum Bank, and an extensive clientele of nonprofits and small businesses. He is the founder and executive producer at the Bentley Media Group. In 2022, Maxwell produced a donor appeal film for Meals by Grace, a Georgia nonprofit dedicated to feeding hungry children that helped raise over $187,000 for the organization. Maxwell was then named to the University of North Georgia inaugural 20 under 40 alumni class. Maxwell exists to form meaningful relationships where his clients and his staff feel successful. Maxwell, tell us all about how do we monetize our passion?
Good morning, and thank you so much for the question. It's interesting. We focus a lot on our accomplishments, our resumes, our bios. You just happened to share my bio. But I'll say that what's more important than any accomplishment or how impressive a bio is, what's more important than that is that you wake up every day feeling excited, feeling energized. How do you do that? You have to either find or design a career that you absolutely adore, one that allows you to work on something that you're passionate about. And there are many people who maybe don't know what that passion is, and that's totally fine. Some people discover it early. I happened to discover it when I was very young. I was actually born with a camera in my hand. It was a medical mystery. I was always running around shooting short films, and it was a phase that I never grew out of. And so with that, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. Some people, it's not going to be so easy. Some people need to give themselves permission to wander and try different things and explore different avenues for creation and empowerment and whatnot. And through doing that, no matter how long it takes, they will eventually find it. And once it is found, having the willingness to put yourself out there and create equity in a brand that is yours, and having the willingness to contact people who might be interested, those are all obviously some Some folks might face roadblocks in doing all of those things, but by placing yourself out of your comfort zone in baby steps to accomplish each one of those steps, like, okay, I think this is something I want to lean into. I'm going to give it a try and I'm going to see what happens. Most people don't do that. Most people don't take that first baby step. So once you've made that step, you're already making progress. And once you lock on to something that feels good, when you feel in your viscera and in your intuition that this is what you're meant to be doing, that this is something that we wake up and it gives you joy, that's a sign that you should lean in and continue on your path. And one of the things that I've realized over the last decade of being a video producer and helping brands, nonprofits, and schools tell their stories with video is it's good to identify problems. What kind of issues exist within your passion? For me, it was videographers tend to have a reputation of being unreliable. They sometimes maybe don't deliver up to a certain quality standard. And all the way up to the larger agencies. Large agencies are sometimes unapproachable. They sometimes give you more than what you need. So I have paid attention to all those things because I've heard it in conversations over and over and over again with my prospects and my clients when I ask them, what was your experience like with your last videographer or your last video studio? And by taking that and really listening to your audience, listening to what kind of issues they deal with and what kind of problems they face, you're able to design a brand that addresses each one of those issues, that it solves those problems, that answers those questions. And that'll come through in your marketing and your messaging, in addition to just the one-on-one conversations you have with your prospects. And so solving problems, identifying within your passion, identifying those problems will definitely help you grow and make it feel like working with you is a no-brainer. And of course, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be roadblocks. There's that cliche of, well, you don't know what you don't know, or you know what you don't know, and then you don't know what you don't know. And I certainly faced a lot of that. There were certain things that I did horribly wrong getting started as a college student doing videography. I would make a financial mistake. I would invest in something that maybe wasn't really aligned with a long-term goal. And so I would say working with a mentor who has been down the path that you're going down would also be extremely helpful in monetizing your passion, because you're going to make mistakes either way. You might as well either work with a mentor or invest in a coach to prevent some of those problems and some of those headaches from occurring. But from 30,000 feet, allow yourself to wander, allow yourself to explore, find something that can get you energized to wake up out of bed in the morning at 4 a.m. without an alarm, and give yourself a chance that 99% of people don't take. Lean into that, see what happens, and then start solving problems. That's, in a nutshell, how I would describe monetizing your passion.
Wow, very impressive and a very thought-provoking as well, Maxwell. There are probably a million questions in my mind right now, but I'll begin with a few. So you mentioned for you, you found your passion very early when you were in college. I was speaking to some high school seniors earlier this week, and one of the questions they asked me was, how young is too young to start a small business of their own? So how would you answer that?
Well, the easy answer is to say you're never too young. And an even better question, or even better response, is you're never too old. The creator of KFC, Colonel Sanders, was in his 50s when he created the fast food restaurant. The founder of Alibaba was denied admission to just about every college, was denied from just about every job interview. And I believe he started several enterprises before he eventually created it. And now it's right up there with Amazon. So I happened to discover it young. Some people discover it in their 30s. Some people discover it in their golden years. It really doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are. I certainly had a lot of questions when I was 20 years old, getting ready to send that invoice saying, am I really worth $1,000 for this service? I'm still in college. I haven't even gotten my degree on the wall yet. And if I could go back, just to your question about how young is too young, if I could go back to my 20-year-old self, and if he were to ask me, am I worth it? I would say yes, because there is value in being young. There is value. To be young is to be trendy. To be young is to know what's hip and what's up and coming. And to be more wise, to be more, I'm avoiding the word old, to be more seasoned, to be more seasoned means you have experience. It means you're well versed in many different areas of life. And there's a certain value just with that. So you're never too young. There's a certain quote from an individual, their name escapes me, but the quote is, you're never too young or you're never too old to walk a new walk or dream a new dream. And so my answer to your high school seniors is, you're never too old. Just get started.
Or never too young.
That's right.
Yeah, so true, so true. The biggest hesitation that most founders or most startups or most people with ideas, or they know what the problem is, they know how to solve this. What holds them back is, when can they expect to make money out of it? How should they wrap their head around that?
Yes. So,
and maybe you could
question.
answer that with your own journey, starting out in college. When were you at a point where you felt that you needed to hire a team? For how long did you keep doing it solo? When did you feel comfortable that you have grown enough where you can actually hire employees and monetize your passion enough to be able to give them a salary and then grow your business some more?
Well, I was at a lucky place in life when I started. I did not have a mortgage. I did not have kids. I did not have I didn't have a huge car payment. I didn't have anything that was severely, I wasn't even paying rent at the time. I was living in my terraced apartment, which is a nice way of saying my dad's basement. And I was able to charge money and make a profit. And I would take that profit and reinvest it back into my business. I would use, well, first of all, I never took out a loan. I never sought investors. I literally had a camera that I got for Christmas, a gaming PC, and this belief that I could create something, that would create revenue. And that's all I had. So that's what I used. And after every project, I would take some of the money that I made and reinvest that back and into better equipment, into a better website, or maybe better marketing materials. And by doing that, I was minimizing my tax liability, of course, but that's a very organic, very natural way to grow an enterprise. Some would even argue that that would be too slow. others would argue that that's too fast. It's all depends on what feels natural to you. And that's just the progression that felt natural to me. If I had a very keen business sense and I had a solid strategy for earning revenue, and I knew I was going to generate $2 or $3 million in a year or 2 years, then yes, I would feel comfortable taking out a loan. I would feel comfortable working with investors. But as a 20-something in college, not very much business acumen, and as a millennial, barely being able to think 5 minutes into the future, let alone 5 years into the future, I had to use what I had, and I had to pace myself. Now, for other folks who do have a mortgage, who do have kids, who do have familial obligations, who are probably in a 9 to 5 that they may or may not like, my response is, if you have an hour in the evenings, if you have an hour every day, you have time to work on a side hustle. You have time to sell your expertise to somebody who would really, really, really gain value from that. If you've been doing marketing for 20 years, if you've been a doctor for 15, 20, 30 years, and you create a side hustle where you allow people to book an hour with you and say, hey, I've been a doctor for 20 years. Ask me anything. Or I've been a marketing expert for 10 years. I've worked with Hyundai. I've worked with Roblox. Ask me anything. You will have people who are interested. And that's just an idea for how you can get started. And believe it was Gary Vee who said, work for somebody else from 9 to 5 and then work for yourself from 5 to 9. But the idea is to take some time, just take whatever time that you have and start small. And it's a comfortable way to start. It's a low risk way to start. Growth can take time, but as long as you are allowing yourself some sort of commitment towards it, you'll be pleasantly surprised at what happens.
It sounds so encouraging, especially so when you talked about doctors, it brings my own story to my mind. I have been a physician for almost 15 years, and now I've realized what my passion might be: to educate people about life technology balance, to educate them about smartphone addiction so that they can improve their efficiency and their productivity, and they can reclaim their time and attention. So when you talk about work from 9 to 5 for other people and then 5 to 9 for yourself, I think that's what is the deal. That's what needs to be done. Now, reflecting upon your own journey, Maxwell, I'm sure it was not all perfect and rosy right from the beginning. So if there were one or two incidences or events or low points that came across as you progressed from being a startup to now a full-blown business, what were those events? How did they shape you into who you are today? How did you get over those?
There's 3 events that come to mind. The first was when I just launched. I was affected by severe social anxiety. I grew up very shy, very introverted, and my heart was probably beating 200 beats a minute for the first 15, 20 years of my life. And when somebody submitted a request for a proposal for my website for the very first time, oh, now it's time for me to call them. Now it's time for me to figure out what they need and to close the sale. And I had never called anybody for anything, except family and friends and, girlfriends and whatnot. And so I remember holding the phone. I was literally like this. I was shaking. I could feel the sweat on my back, and I could feel my throat start to tighten up. And it was one of those things where if you were to be on the phone with me while that was happening, you may not have noticed anything, but I certainly felt it, and I certainly noticed. And I remember making that call, thinking to myself, I have absolutely no idea what I'm about to say. So I dialed anyway. And that's the key moment. I made the call anyway. The lady answered. I introduced myself. Hello, I'm Maxwell from Bentley Media. I saw you sent a note through our website. And she was like, oh, yeah. And we had a conversation. I said, what are you needing? And I gave her a quote. Back then, I was $20 an hour. She still wishes I was $20 an hour, let me tell you. And I hung up the phone, and I just had this moment where I was just like, man, I did it. Like I started. I felt like it sucked, but I still did it. And I mean, I did just fine in retrospect. But that's an example that I touched on earlier of getting out of your comfort zone and doing things that make you feel uncomfortable. And it was one of those things that wasn't so far out of my comfort zone that it was excruciatingly painful, but it was just enough outside the bubble to make me feel like I was getting chased by a lion. And that's whenever I face those situations today in business, I still push onward. I still move forward. The second incident was a little bit later. A few years later, I was sitting at my breakfast table eating a Pop-Tart, and I got a phone call from a prospect who was in a huge rush, and they were trying to film a promo later that day. I don't remember exactly what happened. Maybe their video crew flaked on them. I don't really remember, but my inclination without thinking was to say, yes, we've got you. And I immediately ran outside. I ran 3 miles, came back, and I called a couple of friends and I said, hey, I've got this gig for us this afternoon. Let's do this. And we show up, we get the footage, and then I go back and we start editing and we deliver the project 2 days later. That all sounds rosy, doesn't it? Well, here's the problem. I never discussed what the fee would be. I never got an agreement signed. I never took the 30 seconds that I needed to take care of those things. And what happened when I told them what the fee was, they balked and they became very argumentative. And it was like, I just felt horrible. Like I felt like I made this horrible, horrible decision that I'm not fit to be a business owner, that how could I not have the gumption to take 30 seconds to talk about, but just all these things that fly through our minds all the time because we are our own biggest critic. And I eventually ended up lowering the fee that what we would have charged to appease them, which if I could go back, I wouldn't have done that because I felt like what I proposed was what we were worth. But never, ever, ever, ever after that did I agree to a project without receiving a deposit and receiving ink on paper. That has never happened again. And so it's experiences like that that shape us, not only in business, but in life. The third incident, coronavirus. Of course, I feel like a tired record talking about coronavirus at this point, but when the world stopped and I had just moved out of my dad's basement, actually. I was living on my own and enjoying Atlanta for what it was for a few short months before everything stopped. And it got to a point where I had maybe $150 in my checking account and I had to pay rent and I had to do all these things. So I had to get very creative to create some revenue very quickly. So I ended up going back to my government agency clients, my universities, because no matter what's going on with the economy, they're always going to be having things going on. I ended up repackaging existing footage that we had captured for them over the years and repackaging it with a new context for the situations that they were facing. And that carried us through 2020. And I think a lot of folks are scared to make mistakes they allow themselves to have that fear without realizing that mistakes are what make us grow. And mistakes and having the ability, it just means that you're growing and you're trying something new. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Wow. That was fascinating, Maxwell. Thank you for sharing those three incidences. They are so different in each of their own senses, but so inspiring. And while you are going through those incidences in real life, it might seem like you will never see the light at the end of the tunnel. But now in retrospect, they seem like learning experiences. So we have to get our act together when life throws a curveball at us and do what needs to be done to get it over with, and we will come out brighter and stronger on the other end. So thank you for sharing that, Maxwell. Who has been your mentor in your journey?
Oh man, I've had quite a few mentors. My biggest mentor has been my grandmother. She taught me from a very early age to think positive, because what you attract and you become what you think about. And that has stayed with me through my personal life and my professional life. And it's the reason that I feel successful today, is that very mindset that was shared with me at a very young age.
In order to be successful, you have to feel successful. Do you think that's right?
Yes. And it's also helpful to define success. Earl Nightingale describes success as the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Success isn't a destination. You don't have to be living in the penthouse with the corner office to be successful. As long as you make that first phone call that's giving you anxiety, if you make that call, congratulations, you're successful. No matter how the call goes, you're successful. You agree to that gig and you miss a couple of critical steps, but you learn from it and you keep going, you're successful. And it's absolutely a journey.
It is. It is. We are almost coming to the end of our episode today, Maxwell. What is your parting message for our audience? What can be their take-home point from your journey, from your experience, from your life?
Give yourself a fighting chance at building equity in your own brand and starting an enterprise and starting even a side hustle, because you might be pleasantly surprised. And when you're faced with challenges, face them. When you find situations that give you anxiety, keep going. And unless you really, 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 really feel called to something else, stick with it. Give yourself permission to commit. You will be pleasantly surprised, because waking up every day and doing something that energizes you, that you love, that you adore, is one of life's greatest gifts.
I have goosebumps. Thank you, Maxwell. Thank you for being here on INSPINAR. Thank you. So everybody, let's get out of your comfort zone, find a mentor and start solving problems. Like Maxwell says, start solving problems and everything else will fall into place. Thank you for listening to us on INSPINAR. Let's reconnect with health, joy, and efficiency. Let's reclaim our time and attention. Let's reconnect with what matters, with what really matters. Let's reconnect with the real world. Let's ungrip devices and grip life. I will see you next week on INSPINAR. Thank you.